Hello everyone. Recently, social networks are flooded with pictures of James and Hung to deepen the light. Let's see who they are. CEO James and CEO Hung. They grew up together in the same house. Both brothers were given the task, responsibility for managing their parent company. In Vietnam, Hung's younger brother was adopted by James' parents when he was very young. While James was studying abroad, Hung manages the company very well. Hung met lytieuca and fell in love with her. Lytieuca is a single mother, lives with her nearly 2-year-old daughter, and is pregnant with her second child. James and Hung's father used to object to his son dating poor girls, people who are not of equal social status to his family. He not only stopped James, but before that he prevented the hanging of lytutien. Lytieuca's situation is very difficult. She got married at 16 and had a baby when she was 17. According to Vietnamese law, women are only old enough to register for marriage when they are 18. Lytieuca and her ex-husband got married before the age of 18. Lytutien's husband was then sentenced to 2 years in prison. Her mother-in-law thinks she is the reason why her son is imprisoned. Conflict between lytutien and her mother-in-law became more and more violent until lytieuca and her daughter were kicked out of the house, raising a daughter alone with many difficulties. Since meeting CEO Hung has received his care and help, the life of lytieuca and her daughter has changed a lot. Although her father did not like this relationship, Hung still decided to take care of and protect lytieuca and her daughter, even though he knew that lytutien, pregnant with ex-husband's child. Hung was even more worried. After working at the company, Hung often goes to lytieuca's house to visit her. Lytieuca gradually develops feelings for Hung. James' father finally accepted the relationship between his sons. While James was in trouble because his enemies wanted to destroy his family's company, James teamed up with Hung's younger brother to save the company. James borrowed 8 billion Vietnamese dongs from Hung to pay workers' salaries. Diep is also a single mother. After marriage, they lived close to each other and knew each other. Diep also met and helped lytieuca many times in her relationship with CEO James. Diep also faced opposition from James' family, especially James' father. In the end, it was true love between four people overcame family barriers. James' father gave up everything for the happiness of his sons. He chose to live abroad and left it to his sons to take over the company. However, they still have many difficulties ahead. James is currently borrowing money to pay for his education, overcome the consequences caused by the enemy. In spite of, James and Hung work together to find evidence to convict John. Danger is lurking around them. James was worried that the enemy would risk harming the lie to Diep. Because Diep is currently living alone in the camp and has a close relationship with James, it is likely that John is aiming Diep. Use Diep as a last resort to let him escape to Thailand. James rarely visits the Diep recently because he didn't want the enemy to notice. He only visits her every few days. He used the excuse that he was busy with work. This makes it so profound. Or James is having trouble in the company. Or James's feelings for her have changed. She went out to find out, not knowing that there are always eyes watching her from behind. In the business of James and his brother Hung never confided in lytieuca. Lytieuca has her own life and daughter. Moreover, she is pregnant with her second child. Lytieuca has his own life. After work every day, Hung visits and helps her and her child. Maybe in the future, the relationship between the four of them will become closer. Thanks for watching the video. Wish you all the best. If lytieuca was the villain, how would the story turn out? James and Hung are not brothers, but fate brought them together under one roof. James' parents are successful businessmen, but once back home to do charity, they came across a skinny boy with determined eyes. That boy is Hung. Child lost parents in a tragic accident. Not wanting to leave him alone, they decided to adopt him. James and Hung grew up in the same large villa, but the personality is opposite. James is smart and has strategic vision, while Hung is resilient and strong. Always act decisively. However, the feelings between the two people are always like brothers. When reaching adulthood, James was sent to study abroad, access to developed economies, preparing to become the heir to the corporation. Meanwhile, Hung stayed in Vietnam to replace him in managing the company. Under the direction of Hung, the company is growing rapidly, but that also gave rise to ambition in his heart. During this time, Hung met lytieuca, a beautiful girl, smart but mysterious. She gives him a feeling that is both warm and dangerous, as if she were not just an ordinary woman. Hung loves her passionately but also cannot understand her true self. After many years of studying abroad, James returned home with the desire to bring the company to a new height. But he did not expect that Hung had changed. No longer the boy he once was. Hung is now a shrewd businessman, even stronger than James. The parent company is the pride of the James family. Now, no longer under his complete control, Hung held a large share, made James realize that he is facing a power struggle. But the opponent is the brother he once loved. It's not just the company that's at stake. And James's heart also became unstable when he discovered lytieuca is not just Hung's woman. She has a connection to a mysterious force, and it seems she is manipulating everything in the dark. James begins to investigate, and what he found horrified him. Lytieuca is not a simple person, but she is the daughter of a family. Have a grudge against the James family. From many years ago, she approached Hung not only for love, but also because a revenge plan was hatched, outlined long ago. When the truth was revealed, Hung could not accept it. He felt betrayed from both sides, from the woman he loves, and from the very brother he once respected. Anger turns to hatred, and the power struggle within the company is increasingly fierce. James, though heartbroken, but still determined to take back what belongs to him, he had to face not only heroes, but a hidden force is manipulating the company from behind. Is there still brotherhood, or is there only hatred left? What will James do to win back the company? And lytieuca is really the AI in this game. James is not a person who gives up easily. He silently, investigate unusual transactions in the company, and found that a large amount of shares has been transferred to a foreign investment fund. But the strange thing is that this fund only exists on paper. No clear investor identity. With the help of his trusted assistant Tuan, James raw clues that this mysterious investment fund is actually a front for an underground force by lytieuca. But what is more frightening is, Hung had no idea he was being bullied. Manipulate. James decided to meet Hung to warn him. James went to Hung's office, but he was not welcomed as before. Hung sat behind the desk, looking coldly at James. "What are you doing here?" Hung asked doubtfully. "I know you don't believe me anymore, but listen to me. You are being taken advantage of. This company is falling into the hands of another force, and the mastermind is lytieuca." James calmly replied. Hung laughed bitterly. "You lied to me. Lytieuca loves me. She has no reason to hurt me. You are the one who wants to steal this company." James put a stack of documents on the table. "Here is proof. She bought the shares through a ghost investment fund. If you don't believe me, check it yourself." Hung opened the document, and his eyes gradually turned to surprise. The numbers. All the contracts have traces of lytieuca. But instead of reacting immediately, Hung just laughed coldly. "So what? You think I will turn my back on the woman I love just because of these few pieces of paper?" James sighed. "I know Hung is deceiving himself, but this is not the time to force him to make a decision. Think carefully, don't let it be too late when you realize it." Having said that, James left the office, leaving Hung alone with his chaotic thoughts. Meanwhile, lytieuca began to feel the danger. When James is getting too close to the truth, she met a mysterious man in a fancy bar. James knew too much, she said worriedly. The man in front of her took a sip of wine. Sharp eyes. If so, he cannot live much longer. Lytieuca was stunned. He meant to eliminate him before he could turn the tables. Her heart was pounding. This is not what she wanted. She planned to take over the company, but she doesn't want to kill AI. But now she has no way back. Late one night, James drove home after a long day at work. Little did he know that a black car was following him. Coming to a deserted road, the car behind suddenly accelerated. A dark figure rushed out and pointed a gun at James' car window. Group. Bullet through glass. But James reacted quickly and quickly turned the wheel. His car crashed into the curb and lost control. When James looked up, the shadow had disappeared. He knew this was no ordinary robbery. This is either a warning or a failed assassination attempt. And there is only one person who has a reason to do this, lytieuca. James cannot continue to be passive. He summoned his team of lawyers and loyal shareholders, planned to take back the company. At the same time, he also relied on his connections in security industry to find out who is behind the assassination. Meanwhile, Hung began to doubt lytieuca. When he asked her, "Explain the documents that James gave me," she just smiled coldly. "You really think I'm just a weak woman? Love you, star." Hung felt his heart heavy. He realized that James might be right. But what he didn't know was, Lytutien had already prepared another plan. Will James get the company back? Will Hung choose love or truth? And what is Lytutien's real purpose? Hung returned home after a tense conversation with lytieuca. He felt a sense of unease rising in his heart. His love for her is so deep, but the evidence that James gave was too clear. Hung could not sleep that night. Secret. Access the company's financial system to check. When seeing shady deals and huge amounts of money withdrawn from mysterious accounts, he couldn't believe his eyes. But what shocked him the most is a hidden document file. A contract between Lytutien and a foreign organization, which clearly stated the plan to seize the company and eliminate any AI that gets in her way. Your name is also on the list. Hung felt a chill run down his spine. The woman he loved the most actually betrayed him. Hung clenched his hand. I knew I had to act, but he could not accept this fact. Did Lytutien really take advantage of him from the beginning to the end? He decided to test her. The next morning, he asked to meet her in a fancy cafe, where they used to go. She is still as beautiful as ever, but today her eyes were sharper. What's up, honey? She smiled, but that smile no longer warmed his heart. Hung took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He wants to try a new business. Invest all the company's shares in another fund. What do you think? Lytutien laments the history of people, but immediately regains its natural look. Whatever you do, I always support you, she said sweetly. But Hung saw what he needed to see. A flash of wariness passed through her eyes. Lytutien never let AI touch the shares, which she had secretly acquired. If she really loves him, why is she afraid of this plan? Hung felt his heart broken, but he had no time to grieve. You must act before it is too late. For the first time in many years, Hung took the initiative to seek out James. James looked at his adopted brother with a cautious gaze. What are you doing here? Hung put a file on the table. You are right. She not only betrayed me, but also wanted to destroy you. James opened the raw file. When he saw the evidence, Hung Thursday 10 frowned. So what are you going to do? Hung clenched his fists. I will help you get your company back. But then I wanted to deal with her myself. James looked straight into Hung's eyes. Are you sure? More sure than ever. For the first time in years, two brothers stand on the same side. Hung pretended to continue to trust lytieuca, while James secretly cooperated with the economic police to investigate shady dealings. They set a trap. Hung informed lytieuca that he wants to invest a large amount more in the company and asked her to handle the legal procedures. She had no idea that all transactions are being monitored. When she signed a contract to transfer a huge amount of money abroad, the police immediately rushed in. Lytieuca tried to run away, but Hung blocked her way. You betrayed me. Hung spoke in a low, dangerous voice. Lytieuca looked at him without any gentleness anymore. Do you really think you can catch me? She pulled out a small gun from her coat and pointed straight at the hero. But before she could pull the trigger, a gunshot rang out. James's group fired first. Lytieuca fell down, blood stained his shirt. She looked at Hung one last time, her lips moving slightly. Did you ever really love me? Hung closed his eyes. I used to be afraid, but now it's all over. With clear evidence, the entire organization behind lytieuca was destroyed. James' company was restored and Hung returned. Support him in rebuilding. But even though we won, their hearts still bear scars that cannot be healed. One night Hung visited lytieuca's grave. He can't hate her completely. She was once the woman he loved, even though in the end she only saw him as a pawn. James came to Hung's side and asked, "Are you okay?" Hung smiled faintly. "I don't know anymore, but at least I'm not blind anymore." I patted my brother on the shoulder. "We have a lot of work to do, let's start over." Hung nodded. A new chapter opens, no betrayal, no hatred. Only two brothers left and a future ahead.